One Republic. Song Someday. It's Wayne here on the Red Hot Chili Peppers next, Under the Bridge. And looking forward to playing that for you. Having a look at the situation with AdBlue and the very important additive that's put into diesel and into truck engines in order to reduce emissions and so on. It was in short supply. Federal government responded to it, and according to Innovation Australia, a public policy and business innovation webpage, a $29 million government subsidy has helped Australia's Incitec Pivot company out of Brisbane to increase the domestic production of AdBlue by about 800%, and in fact actually at the moment producing about 75% now of what the nation needs. Means we still have to import 25% from elsewhere. On the Innovation Australia webpage, the federal government's position is this: long term, so the short term is they put $29 million into a private company, Incitec Pivot, who'd closing down their operations because, for whatever reason, they didn't think it was viable to continue with making urea in Australia. Now, what the reasons are for that, the federal government might like to explain why such an important manufacturer locally of something that's so crucial for trucking and also urea for our farming, why we didn't actually look to support them earlier, but we've now helped them produce AdBlue. And this 75%, according to Angus Taylor, who's the Energy Minister. But he says this: long term, the government is focused on assisting manufacturers and suppliers to secure international supplies of, wait for this, AdBlue and TGU, which is urea, technical grade urea, and assist the shipping and customs entry into Australia. Long term, they don't intend to have a viable local industry of TGU, urea, or AdBlue. That's what it says on their own webpage. So now let's just cut to the chase. Here we have a federal government member, Anne Webster. She's a doctor in children's services and so forth, but she's representing the seat of Mallee, and that's Mildura and Oyen and a lot of people across regional Victoria where we broadcast. And for her part, Dr. Anne Webster has stated that the government has ramped up its local AdBlue production to keep Australia moving. Fertiliser manufacturer Incitec Pivot's ramped up its production to 800%. And it sounds like, she's reading from the same sheet as the Innovation webpage. 75% of Australia's AdBlue needs are now available. She didn't mention in her press release anything about the $29 million of a government subsidy that went to the private company. And I'm not saying it shouldn't happen or anything like that. We need the AdBlue and we need to keep the trucking industry going. But she did then copy and paste the Innovation webpage's final comment. With a view to the longer term, the government continues to offer assistance to AdBlue manufacturers and suppliers to secure international supplies of technical grade urea and AdBlue and assist with shipping and customs entry into Australia. So Dr. Webster is reinforcing the Innovation and the Energy Minister's position. But they're not actually reinforcing a position where we actually make technical grade urea for the people of Australia, for the farmers of Australia, for the truckers of Australia. They're saying for now, we'll put $29 million in until we can work out some other international way of securing more of this stuff in the long term. So here's the next stage of this discussion. Lee Creek Energy, which is basing itself out of the South Australian outback town where coal was originally manufactured and it was railed down to Port Augusta and we made into that electricity. Yes, the same Lee Creek site now is being looked at with a Korean company, and their intention is, and we've talked about this on the radio numerous times, that they're going to take the coal seam gas, they're then going to produce urea, technical grade urea, and out of that we could actually make AdBlue. Here's the interesting thing. Lee Creek Energy has just got its Aboriginal approval sign-off on doing this at the Lee Creek site. That was a key component. We'd called out the local member, Rowan Ramsey, that we hadn't had anything from him to say that he'd actually assisted them through this process. Nothing from Rowan. He said he hadn't been in touch with them for a long time. So another failure by the local member. And here's the next point of it, though. We need now the state Minister in South Australia, Dan Van Hulst-Pelican, the mining minister, the Deputy Premier, we need him now to fast-track the process. This business of the current Liberal government, or the coalition if you want, the Nationals and the Liberals at a national level, with Angus Taylor saying long-term we're looking to not actually be doing this urea making here. This is all part of signing off on net zero. You see, if we say that we're getting it from overseas, somebody else has got the carbon emissions, and it's them that's using the gas to make urea. It's them that's using the carbon to make AdBlue and so forth. This is a cop-out from the coalition federally. This is basically saying that we're going to do it a different way by bringing it in, importing it in, and this does not support our local farmers and the very brave people at Lee Creek Energy who are putting this together to get you urea for Australian farmers, to get you AdBlue for your Australian truckers. This is a cop-out from the federal government, and you need to write to your local member, Rowan Ramsey in South Australia, Tony Passon. You can write to Ann Webster. You can also write to Susan Lee if you're listening in any of those broadcast areas, and let them know that they are planning to not manufacture the urea product that gives us AdBlue and our farming urea, and they're copping out on it because they specifically are looking at this net zero 2050. They've signed off and they've signed us off, and that's where it's a big disappointment from the coalition.